Alrighty. Hey everyone, Patricio here, back with another one of our abstract webinar series. This time, really excited to have Kim Gold on with us, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how everything is being shaken up in sort of the legal side of things and the general counsel part of the world, just because we have been talking a lot about government relations and regulatory affairs in our previous webinars. So really excited to have Kim on board and sort of talk about what we've been cooking up here at Abstract and the trends we're seeing, at least from the perspective of a general counsel. So before we dive into it, Kim, really happy to have you on board. Wondering if you can give us a quick background or intro of who you are, what you're doing, and we can go from there.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I'm super excited. My first podcast webinar, so thanks. I most recently was the EVP, Chief Legal and Risk Officer at HITRUST, which is in the cyber infosec space. I had the legal team and the government affairs team, so Abstract, kind of played a role looking at it from both the perspective of legal, pure, straight legal needs and government affairs needs as well. And before that, I did the traditional law school, clerkship, big firm, went in-house for a client of the firm. And, I've been at big and small public companies and small private startup type companies. So I think I have a lot of different perspectives on legal needs and government affairs needs, and look forward to talking with you about it.
Awesome. Yeah, and before we dive into sort of the insights and trends we've been seeing in this space, because I have a lot of questions for you, but we'll make sure to keep it focused here. I'm curious, what kind of drew you to working with us at Abstract? And transparently, Kim's one of our formal advisors on the legal side of things. So, I was pretty apprehensive. I was like, oh man, she's a big time general counsel. We're your classic, seed stage startup. But you were really aligned with sort of what we were building and innovating on. So, what drew you to what we're doing in our vision?
Every time I talk to you, Mo, and or Matt, I learn something, and you're so passionate about what you're doing and want to make a difference. And I thought it'd be fun to join, give you my thoughts, and learn with you as the product evolves and Abstract evolves and grows and moves into even different verticals and different ideas. So I thought it'd be fun, and I appreciate you asking me to join the advisory board.
Yeah, and we've been seeing this happen slowly more and more because historically the sort of legal regulatory space has been known for being very set in its ways, not being open to innovation. I have to be careful, where and when I say that.
Their ways, really?
Yeah. But we are definitely seeing a lot of disruption happen. I mean, we started back in 2019 with really early forms of AI and models around, analyzing and changing legal language. But now it's really taking off, especially with the advancements around large language models, most popular of which is what people have been hearing about with ChatGPT, GPT-4. So, kind of diving into some of the key topics I want to talk about today. So, as a general counsel, what have you seen in terms of importance as it pertains to government policy, like changes in government bills and regulations? Because it wasn't, I would say 10 years ago, it wasn't a common sort of practice to be looking at all the changes in regulatory and legislative affairs, right, as part of the legal function of corporate. But more and more, we're seeing companies look at what government's doing, at the local, state, and federal level. So what are sort of the key sort of trends you've seen change in the GC space with government policy?
I think historically government affairs was kind of more isolated, and it was not always under the legal umbrella. Sometimes, there'd be an external affairs or government affairs team that was separate and apart. But I think there's so much overlap, and there are so many, privacy, information protection, security, all kinds of topics that really you have to focus on from a government affairs perspective, but they also impact businesses from a legal perspective too. So, there's a lot of alignment there in the need for being on top of things and monitoring what's going on at all levels, because you need to know how it's going to potentially impact the business. You want to be able to get ahead of it and plan. I mean, no one likes surprises, so legal likes to try to, you know, head off the surprises whenever possible.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard a lot about, hey, it used to be the law changed, now we have to comply, and that's an expensive process. But oh my God, if we're able to know about that early on when it was draft language, and we could have, influence or know about it earlier, we could save money, right? And I think executives are, they're starting to understand that concept more and more. But yeah, any thoughts on how to communicate that value to executives, that because that takes time, right? To at least a year, 2 years, right? To be looking at bills that far up the pipeline. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's important. I think if you can affect change to make it something that's easier to comply with, or, kind of still end up where the regulatory agency or government agency wants to be, but there's a way that's less onerous to the business community or makes more sense, right? I think it's better to partner and have a voice than just end up with, this is the new law, this is the new regulation, you need to comply, and whether you're big or small. And so I think things impact businesses differently, right? If you're small and you have in your startup and you don't have a lot of resources or budget, it's very different than if you're a massive company and you have a team for everything and a budget for every issue. So I think it's great to stress the importance of getting in there early and being a voice and being able to make a difference.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why you're really excited about what we're building, just because our product is able to support large corporations that have a built out government relations, regulatory affairs sort of department, and help uncover risk and opportunities across any number of government bodies, but also provide an opportunity for smaller firms and enterprises that maybe only have one, like just the general counsel, be able to do that work without having to hire 2 to 3 analysts. So, uh, you know, that's our sort of promise and focus, right, with what we're building. But how are you hearing about AI in the space? Like, what are some of the concerns, I guess, that you've heard from colleagues? And I feel like if this would be a great time to just like hear that out and maybe talk about that.
Sure. I mean, there's lots of pluses, but there are some concerns. From a legal perspective, there's limitations on accuracy, right? That's a big concern. Hallucinations, you need to make sure it's accurate. You have an ethical obligation to your clients and to the court. So you want to make sure everything you're saying is validated and correct. So concerns around accuracy, concerns about handling of confidential client information, right? Lawyers, a lot of very sensitive, very confidential information that's protected by the attorney-client or attorney-work product privilege. So you have to make sure that that information isn't being shared and potentially waiving a privilege or creating an issue. And I think just around, privacy and ethics generally, lawyers have an ethical obligation. So you have to make sure that you're upholding that and using AI responsibly.
Yeah, and I think breaking those three down. So starting with hallucinations, this is something you and I have tried about a good amount. Where on the technical side, it's called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. But essentially, what that does is make the model only return results from specific documents that are allowed to be used for results, right? So that way you avoid hallucinations, because every time the model returns a result, it has to point to some line in the bill or line in the company document, right? That's being impacted by regulation, etc. However, I think the main thing that we're going to see in the next sort of 24 months, like next year, 2 years, is just a faster adoption slash, increase in intelligence of these models. Because the thing is, they start at a base level of intelligence, which is already more robust than an individual, person or analyst. But in order for it to do the job of 2 or 3 people, the company has to actually use the model, right? It has to actually give it documents that explain what their product does, let it actually run analyses on regulations, legislation, and go from there. So I think that is probably one of the most valid concerns that people in the industry have, and at least we've been seeing a lot of development towards that. I think the main thing is like having people understand that this model is like a person, right? So we have to tell them like ask it questions like a person, right? Like treat it like a person. So I don't know if you have any ideas around, how to not change people's mind, but maybe how to start thinking about this new way of working with these tools that they're not just software. Yeah.
I think you have to see it. I mean, I was
Yeah.
skeptical at first because, I've been practicing for a long time, and something like this was, not even really a thought at the time when I graduated from law school and was still using books occasionally to do some research. And, I think seeing it, I was amazed when, I shared some documents and information to kind of give you kind of to teach you about what HITRUST was doing, right? And what potential areas of interest and concern were. And it was amazing to me how it evolved, even in the short 9 months or so. Just the amount it was able to distill and return, and with the citations. So I think seeing it and realizing that it does return responses based on what you teach it is huge. I mean, you don't think that's going to happen, and it does quickly. And I like the fact that it always provided a citation or a reason for the response, so you could quickly validate it, and it was easy. You could and it linked it, so it was just seeing it and then knowing that it's telling you why it said something, or it highlighted a concern, or it highlighted excuse me, an opportunity, and being able to quickly check it was,
Yeah.
so I think getting out there and giving demos and letting people see it, and that it works, it's accurate, it gives you backup,
Yeah,
it
no,
gives you
100%.
comfort.
And I think with any new sort of innovation, it's just a matter of time before people actually start to understand, oh, this is how this works. This is how it's not only saving time, but actually uncovering things that we were fundamentally missing. And I mean, we're focused on the
Right.
sort of legal government space, but this is happening across all other industries as well, industry verticals. So, with
Yeah.
oh yeah.
And I think one of the I was gonna say one of the things that jumped out at me is that, a lot of the legal products I've seen are kind of wrappers around Chat GPT, and Abstract actually has a
Mhm.
product and tools. So I think that makes it different too. So, you're working within a tool that's in a more controlled environment, and not just sharing information and not knowing if there's an update to the Chat GPT T's and C's that might, you know, give you less protection or
Yeah.
something. So I think the thing that really distinguishes the Abstract tool and product is that it's actually a tool and product, not just, another fancy Chat
Yeah, and I
GPT
think
iteration.
this is a really good point, and it sort of ties with the other 2 points about data privacy and sort of keeping things to the client. Uh, Ourselves and other companies in this space are having to anonymize and encrypt a lot of the not a lot, all of the data that we get from our clients, so that it's not being pumped into some third party model, and then that can be shared by who knows what. uh, so that takes time, takes money, takes technical resources, and I think that's one of the core value propositions of working with a company that is just focused on that solution, because we spend all of our time thinking about these things, making sure that all that data is not shared with other people. So I think that's a really good point. And, you know, if you think about the next 5 years, and now that you have a pretty good understanding of what can be done with this new sort of tech, right? Um, where do you see changes potentially happening in the GC space and government affairs space?
And, I think especially in smaller businesses or smaller legal teams where, you know, there's always a mountain of information you need to process, and usually you need to process it fast. Someone wants an answer or needs an answer quickly, and there's just not enough budget dollars to get hire staff or outside counsel. I think it's really going to help GCs and companies digest a tremendous amount of information a lot more quickly and help make more informed decisions. You know, usually you can give a pretty quick answer by doing some quick research, but with tools like this, you can get so much more information digested to give better answers more quickly. I also think it's going to be helpful in streamlining really tedious and time-consuming tasks like reviewing diligence materials, document production and contract review, contract management, things like that. I think, you know, people don't typically have a lot of time, and those are the things you kind of do after hours when you're not putting out fires or answering pressing legal questions or government affairs needs. And so I think having that kind of in the background, doing a lot of the tedious work, will be a huge time and money saver. So I think those are two really great things, and I think it will especially be helpful for smaller, more budget constrained.
Yeah, no, totally agreed. So this is all great, and you know, really appreciate you coming on board, Kim, to do this with us, and you know, hopefully we were able to you know, come out with some nuggets of insight for our viewers here. But with that, we'll make sure to share your LinkedIn, you know, if that's cool with you, with anyone that may want to reach out and connect. But really appreciate you sharing your insights, and yeah, excited to stay in touch.
Well, me too. I'm excited to keep working with you and see where
Thanks, Kim.
Abstract goes. Thanks.